Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a special meeting of our Board of Trustees. Special because it's atypical, special because I think the topic is just that, one that's important to the authority as we look longer term at the many key strategic initiatives and opportunities that are in front of us, and for which we're expecting positive outcomes and to deliver in a real strong way for the benefit of all the constituents we serve. With us today is a full complement of my fellow trustees, Judge Nikanji, Tracy McKibben, Mike Balboni, Dennis Trainer, and Tony Pacente. I'm pleased to have all of them join us today, along with our President and CEO, Gil Quinones, and his distinguished team and staff, some of whom are present in White Plains and others who are participating virtually. This meeting, albeit special, has otherwise been duly noticed pursuant to open meetings law, and hence I'm pleased to formally call the meeting to order. We've all had the benefit of distribution of not only the agenda, but our advanced reading and materials. And unless there's any questions or recommendations for changes to that agenda, I'd ask for a motion to adopt what was presented to us.
So moved.
I heard a second in there as well. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried, and the agenda has been adopted. As is typical, we will start our meeting in an executive session for plus or minus an hour or so. Hence, I'd ask for a motion to conduct an executive session pursuant to Section 105 of the Public Officers Law.
So moved.
Second.
Dennis, thanks for the second. Michael, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. We will move to executive session and be back to all of those otherwise participating, as I said, as soon as possible. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. If I could ask for a motion to resume our meeting in open session.
So moved.
Thanks, Chris. Second in there. Thanks, Michael. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And as always, remind everyone that no votes were taken during our time in executive session. We have one action item in the consent agenda. We were polled to ensure there were no conflicts prior to the meeting. Unless anyone's had a sudden change of circumstance or heart, I'll assume we're good to go on conflicts. As was stated up front, this is the first of two special meetings to focus on the long-term strategy of the authority and canals. It's a discussion, informational session. I don't say that to minimize it, but I say that to manage expectations for anyone paying attention. We look forward to some great presentations and ample discussion among all of us as a board and executive team. With that, I'm pleased to have Yves Noel, SVP of Strategy and Corporate Development, kick things off. Well, I take it back. Gil's going to kick things off. Sorry, Gil. Didn't mean to step over you there. My bad. Gil's going to kick things off. He'll hand it off to Yves from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, trustees and NYPA executive management team and staff and the public who are watching this meeting today or maybe later on Rewind. This is our first of two strategic planning retreats with our Board of Trustees before we bring our Vision 2030, our strategic plan, to our December Board of Trustees meeting for their review and approval. So for this first meeting, we will cover our vision and mission, how we should preserve the value of the hydropower, talk about transmission development and our role there, digital transformation, and our sustainability and social and corporate governance posture and plans. Subject matter experts from NYPA will cover each of these items. There will be some time allotted for questions and discussions with our Board of Trustees. So with that, I'll pass it on to Eve. Eve Noel, our Head of Strategy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the board and the senior NYPA and Canals team for participating in Vision 2030 Strategy Retreat. We have a lot to discuss today because we are busy reinventing this organization for the decade ahead. My goal is to explain how we crafted our strategy and highlight its major assertions. You will see our well-crafted approach reflected in the topics on the agenda page. This afternoon, I begin this session with a description of who we are and what we do. Then I'll talk about who we serve and end with our aspirational view of our future, NYPA's vision and mission in 2030. Given the major industry trends, it is our view that we have 4 strategic challenges. During today's session, the first of 2, we will discuss 2 of the challenges. These discussions will be led by subject matter experts who will provide a brief 10-minute overview. The overview will include the historic context, our aspirations, and include with our initial recommendations. We will then transition to foundational pillars, illustrating our track record of success and our future focus. Throughout these sessions, we want to hear from you. We want a lively discussion with questions and commentary. While no decisions will be made today, we can hopefully come away with a sense of where the largest state-owned utility must go to serve the long-term interests of the people of New York, carry out the governor's ambition of a clean energy vision, and provide leadership in this changing era. Next slide. Given the turbulent period we are living through, it may seem like a huge leap of faith to determine where we need to go or end up in 2030. But that's exactly what we'll be doing today. You may ask, what gives us the confidence to move ahead when we need to grapple with so many uncertainty? The simple answer is our extraordinary history and our recent track record. I start with familiar history. As the board knows full well, NYPA was created to ensure that the hydroelectric power generated by the St. Lawrence River should remain, and I quote, forever in the actual possession of the people of the state. We have a long and proud legacy. Created by Governor Franklin Roosevelt over considerable opposition, NYPA would become an early and successful experiment in the public power and innovation. Now, as we are about to enter our 10th decade, all 2,500 members of our NYPA and Canal team are focused on serving the people of New York. Next slide. Now let's discuss why NYPA is essential. Basically because of what we do. NYPA provides value. Specifically, NYPA provides value in generation, provides value in transmission, and provides value in customer energy solutions for state goals. In generation, NYPA produces 25% of the power in New York State, with 80% of it carbon-free. In transmission, NYPA operates over 1/3 of the high voltage transmission grid. In customer energy solutions, NYPA has implemented over 2,300 projects, reducing 1.2 million tons of greenhouse gases. It's quite a lot. Next slide. That takes us to who do we serve? NYPA exists to serve the people of the state of New York and operates for their benefit. I can't say that more emphatically. NYPA exists to serve the people of the state of New York and operate for their benefit. Our retail energy and services customers include local governments, municipalities, rural cooperatives, and C&I businesses. We also sell power to the wholesale market. Next slide. In conclusion, we rewrote our vision and mission to reflect a fundamental change. A primary focus on the customer, what will be required to make this leap. Our vision statement is simple but powerful. A thriving, resilient New York powered by clean energy. Our mission is how we accomplish that. Lead the transition to a carbon-free, economically vibrant New York through customer partnerships, innovative energy solutions, and the responsible supply of affordable, clean, reliable electricity. Part of this process is imagining how our stakeholders will understand our message. We want to demonstrate a focus on resiliency and serving the people of New York. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions, thoughts, comments, or anyone? I think we're all familiar. I think we all like the refinement in terms of the vision and mission statements. Simpler is always better. So nicely done there, team. If there's nothing else, I think next up, take us a little deeper on hydro. On the hydro side is Chris Fry.
Thank you, Chairman Colmo. Good afternoon, trustees, colleagues, and members of the public. It is my distinct pleasure to speak with you today about Nypus hydropower and its role in our 2030 vision. In order to make this as interactive as possible, I'll keep my remarks brief and pause at the end of each slide for questions and discussion. Now you may be wondering, Nypus has been successfully operating our hydro facilities for over 60 years. What about this is strategic or visionary? As Eve explained, the New York energy industry is rapidly transforming to achieve the ambitious goals of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or CLCPA. That transformation creates both opportunities and challenges for Nypus hydro units. This is critically important because Nypus hydropower is really the foundation that makes the achievement of New York's 70% by 2030 renewable energy goal possible. It's therefore a key aspiration of our Vision 2030 strategy to preserve and enhance the value of our hydropower assets as the grid evolves. And I'll pause right there for any questions.
Why don't you run through your presentation, Chris, and then
Okay.
we can talk at the back end about the topic in total.
Happy to do so. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, Nypus has been operating our hydro facilities for over 60 years, 62 to be exact. Our St. Lawrence project went into operation in 1958 and was followed shortly after by Niagara in 1961. Today, over 60 years later, Nypus hydro plants still provide over 20% of New York's electricity needs. In 2019, Nypus generated over 25 terawatt hours of hydropower. To put that in perspective, that's enough to power roughly 3.5 million New York homes. In addition to being completely clean, Nypus hydropower is among the lowest cost electricity in the state. It has been, and it continues to be, a tremendous driver of economic development through Nypus' various low-cost power programs. However, the grid is evolving, and Nypus needs to prepare for the future. To that end, Nypus recently launched our next Gen Niagara program. This is a 15-year, $1.1 billion life extension, modernization, and digitization program to prepare Niagara for the next half century. Next slide, please. As the grid evolves to meet New York's clean energy goals, Nypus hydro is becoming more important than ever. Achieving the state's decarbonization goals will require the addition of a tremendous amount of new renewable resources. I'm sure you've all heard of New York's ambitious 6,000 megawatt distributed solar goal, and even larger 9,000 megawatt offshore wind goal. However, Nypus hydro is really the foundation that makes New York's 70 by 30 renewable energy goal possible. Without Nypus hydro, New York would require significantly more new renewables, potentially doubling the amount of offshore wind or nearly quadrupling the amount of distributed solar. And that would, of course, entail significantly greater ratepayer expense. It's therefore crucial to the cost-effective achievement of the CLCPA goals to maintain Nypus hydropower output into the future. In addition to continuing to provide clean baseload power, Nypus hydro will increasingly be looked to provide grid stabilization services. The influx of intermittent wind and solar will place new demands on the grid. Due to their dispatchable nature, Nypus hydro projects are uniquely positioned to provide minute-to-minute balancing and ramping capability to offset the short-term variability in intermittent renewables. Last but not least, New York's transition to a clean energy future will require long-duration storage to mitigate both hour-to-hour and day-to-day fluctuations in renewable generation. Once again, Nypus hydro assets are uniquely positioned to provide this critical service to the grid. We foresee a tremendous increase in the utilization of both the Lewiston Pump Generating Facility at Niagara, as well as Nypus standalone Blenheim-Gilboa Pump Storage Facility. Next slide, please. However, with these opportunities also come challenges. The influx of intermittent renewable resources is expected to upend Niagara's and St. Lawrence's historical operating paradigms. Shown here on the left is the typical range of St. Lawrence's output last year. As you can see, the plant would ramp up or down to accommodate the needs of the grid, but would typically not fall below 800 megawatts at any given time. Shown on the right is a forecast of St. Lawrence's hourly output in 2030. As you can see from the hourly points scattered all across the graph, with the addition of intermittent renewable resources, St. Lawrence could be faced with frequent and drastic curtailments in output. This presents challenges both from operational and financial perspectives. Operationally, running the facilities this way is expected to significantly increase wear and tear on the units and correspondingly increase O&M expense. In addition, the influx of renewables is expected to both reduce the volume of Nypus hydro generation, as well as suppress New York ISO energy prices, delivering a double blow to Nypus revenue. Last but not least, as I mentioned before, any reduction in Nypus hydro generation would require a corresponding increase in the volume of new renewables to get to that 70% by 2030 goal, which would of course involve greater ratepayer expense. Now, you may be wondering, how does this align with the opportunities, the critical needs for Nypus hydro that I discussed on the prior slide? The answer is, it doesn't, yet, which is why this is a core component of our 2030 vision. Next slide, please. We've developed a 4-point plan to preserve and enhance the value of Nypus hydro. The first aspect is to redouble our advocacy, both at the New York ISO and the Public Service Commission. Some of the services that I mentioned that will be necessary to support intermittent renewables, such as ramping, don't exist yet in the New York ISO marketplace. NYPA is, of course, an active stakeholder at the New York ISO and will continue to advocate for market rules that fairly compensate NYPA's hydro units for the services they provide to the grid. In addition, New York's energy regulations continue to evolve, and NYPA actively participates in policy development to help align the state's policies with operational and market realities. Secondly, as I mentioned before, we're undertaking a life extension, modernization, and digitization program at Niagara, which is intended to address both points B and C, shown here. This comprehensive program will not only extend the useful life of Niagara, but also increase efficiency and reduce operational expense, improving the competitiveness of the facility in the market. Last but not least, we're evaluating new customer arrangements to better capture the environmental value of Nypus hydro generation. We're developing a voluntary green power program, which we hope to launch next year. Through this program, customers who are interested in greening their energy supply could purchase the environmental attributes of Nypus available hydro generation. This would both support our customers in achieving their sustainability goals, as well as enable NYPA to obtain value for the environmental benefits that our hydro provides. That concludes my prepared remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah,
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead, Tracy.
yeah. One question that I had, Chris, is if I look at the previous slide that you had where you lay out the potential curtailment of reliance on our hydro facility, and looking at the 4 areas that you've laid out where we're going to continue to preserve our leadership role, where does technology and innovation go into application for our facilities to create greater efficiencies and our delivery of power to our customers? I don't see it as a bullet, but and if that's even an option, do we see opportunities for investments and technology applications for our existing facilities that will drive down cost, that will continue to make us competitive going forward?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. That's really what the Next Gen Niagara program is all about. It's not just extending the useful life, but really improving the operations through digitization efforts. Many previous controls that were analog will now be replaced with digital versions. That'll give us greater insight into the operation of the facility. And there's really a whole host of technologies that are going to be going into the Next Gen Niagara program to prepare that unit better for the future market that involves a lot more intermittent renewables.
Chris, you mentioned this presentation mentions improvements at the Niagara, but people should understand that St. Lawrence has already gone through this life extension program, so that's not being left out. It's that we were ahead of the curve on that life extension, and that helps to prolong the life of that facility as well.
Absolutely. No, that's completely correct. And thank you for mentioning that. I apologize. I didn't include it in my remarks because we're trying to be forward looking, but that's absolutely correct. St. Lawrence has already undergone a life extension and modernization program.
Chris, clarify if you would a little bit more on the prior slide. So without fully appreciating all that's depicted there and the hundreds, if not thousands of dots, other than accepting that it's suboptimal from our standpoint, do we take that as a given? Are you saying that's what 2030 will look like, or that's what 2030 would look like under a worst case scenario, a best case scenario? What can be done to mitigate that transition? Or is it, no, this is what the future state will be, and it's on us to figure out how we best navigate that transition and keep ourselves out of harm's way?
This is not necessarily a worst case scenario, but what we expect to result if we didn't take action. And so through a combination of as I mentioned, the Next Gen Niagara program, investing in our assets, as well as our advocacy efforts at the New York ISO and with the Public Service Commission, this is the future that we want to avoid. This graph, as you mentioned, has thousands of points. It's 87, 60 points, one for every hour of the year. And it shows how, absent action on our part, the unit could be displaced really from the market, could be curtailed, and wouldn't be able to run at its full output all the time. It would frequently be curtailed back to accommodate the intermittent wind and solar resources. And this is not a pretty picture. This is what we're trying to avoid through both the advocacy efforts and investment in our units.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, Ezekiel, you're correct. This is suboptimal. And we believe that this basically are points, data points, if nothing changes, if the rules today remain the same. So what we're saying and we're advocating at the Public Service Commission level, our regulators, and the New York ISO, who administers the wholesale market, is that this is not only suboptimal to NYPA and its assets, it's actually suboptimal to all of the ratepayers in New York. The closer we are to our typical operating range on the left side there, the better it will be for the ratepayers, because that means that that the state is not going to have to overbuy and overpay for extra wind and solar if we are maintained to where we've always operated. So in the latest order at the Public Service Commission, they had asked us in collaboration with our sister authority, NYSERDA, to study this specifically so that they can be informed on what are the right regulations that they need to put together so that that right side chart doesn't happen.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, a question. As we move forward with this vision development for going up to 2030, to what extent are we working with our customers, our current customers and future customers, as to what their needs will be and how they envision the generation and transmission energy state within New York?
Well, Trustee Bafoni, we're working very closely with our customers, because every time we make significant investments in our power plants like Next Gen Niagara, eventually that shows up in their rates, right? So we have been working very, very closely with them, showing them that our investments make sense for them in the long term. Now, on our part, we do need to continue to advocate for the right regulatory rules and for the right market design and market rules at the New York ISO, not only for the benefit of NYPA, but for the benefit of our customers and ratepayers of our state as a whole.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, thanks very much. Unless there's any other questions, why don't we move to transmission, an area we're obviously intending, anticipating, planning to lean further into. Kim Harriman and Gurish Bahal will take us through this portion of the discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, trustees, chairman, colleagues, and the public. Today, I'm going to talk to you briefly about the opportunities that NYPA has in front of it in the field of transmission development. Next slide. As you heard earlier from Chris, the state has a climate law that aspires to have 70% of its consumed energy from renewable resources and 100% emissions-free grid by 2040. To that end, the governor recognized this past April, and I was part of the team that negotiated with the legislature, an amendment to the way we cite renewable energy and we plan grid investments. That act is known as it's listed above. I have a lovely acronym called Abracadabra, because that's exactly what it needs to do. In order to get this generation that we need to build to hit our 70 by 30 goals, we've got to make sure that we can move it from areas where it's produced to where it can be consumed. And to that end, the legislature, along with the governor, recognized we need a comprehensive grid study. And that grid study can't just be at the bulk level. It's got to start at the local transmission and distribution level. And that's what you see as A. On that study level, these are really the byways and the county roads. How do you get out from those pockets in that map you see on the left-hand slide? How do you move that generation out from those local areas and get it to that highway? And then once it gets to the highway, how do you then move that electricity from across the highway? And there's no better entity suited for this than NYPA. As you saw on an earlier map, we own the backbone of the transmission system. So a grid study is currently underway. It's due by the end of the year under the law. I am privileged to be leading a multi-agency and authority effort of very good experts in transmission planning, to look at all of these inputs of where the generation will reside and where do we need to move it. This study is going to be due at the end of the year, and it's going to include an investment plan for local transmission and distribution that our New York utilities will undertake. It will also include a bulk investment plan. And that bulk plan is going to identify where on the electric grid we need to make investments and upgrades to facilitate this clean energy future for New York. To that extent, on the bulk side, there's really two tools, two pathways in which projects will get constructed. The first is called what we call Order 1000, and that's really a federal paradigm in which once you identify a need to upgrade the bulk system, the New York Independent System Operator will solicit ideas, project proposals for how to solve the need identified on the system. NYPA has participated in those types of RFPs from the New York ISO, and you're going to hear that in a minute from Girish. The second tool that Abracadabra created was a recognition that NYPA is singularly suited to develop certain transmission projects that need to go faster, faster than what is permitted right now under the RFP process run by the New York Independent System Operator. And to that extent, the Public Service Commission, which is the state regulator, is going to receive this grid study, can look at it and designate to NYPA projects that it believes NYPA can go expeditiously and construct. NYPA, of course, has to have the advice and consent of its trustees before it would pursue those projects. And you're going to hear a little bit about the fact that the Abracadabra basically allows the commission to go ahead of the study and designate expedited projects that it wants NYPA to pursue. And Girish is going to talk a little bit more about that. The last component of the siting law really looked at the fact that not only do we need to move generation to where it can be consumed, we need a grid investment study in order to do that cost effectively, but also that the regulatory process for even approving transmission lines has been pretty slow in New York. And so to that end, the Act included a new streamlined process. Regs have been issued and NYPA will be commenting on them. I'm going to turn it over to Girish now to talk a little bit more about the opportunities that really are presented to NYPA.
Thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, trustees, public, and NYPA colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here at NYPA and looking towards the 2030 vision of being the leading transmission developer, owner, and operator for the state and accommodating the needs of the state and where we want to go. As Kim in her presentation discussed different things that are happening from CLCPA and ARIC CBA perspective and the ambitious carbon goals of the state of New York. As we've discussed before, NYPA owns roughly 1,450 circuit miles of transmission in New York, basically most of the 765 and a large backbone system. We are working right now to prioritize and accelerate projects, incentivizing the transmission of renewable energy to the load centers, and at the same time, working with the private sector to expand our capabilities. This slide is more at a higher level, sets the stage of different types of projects that are in progress at NYPA. As Kim pointed out, there's a public policy transmission projects that we are working on. AC transmission, or segment A of that, is a very good example where we partnered up and collaborated with a private entity, expanded our capabilities, and won a competitive RFP. We are looking to invest roughly $281 million in that project with targeted completion by 2023. Similarly, as a part of our local transmission plan, NYPA is currently working on Moses to Adirondack Smart Path project, where we are investing roughly $484 million with a target to be in service by 2023. And most recently, as you heard Kim talk about the priority transmission projects, the Public Service Commission has assigned Northern New York project to New York Power Authority to execute. We anticipate to invest roughly $498 million of the total $905 million of this project, with a targeted in-service of Q4 of 2025. We will shortly be issuing a solicitation of interest for potential collaborators for this project as mandated by the AREG CBA legislation. Again, our strategy really is to become the leading transmission owner and developer and operator in the state of New York, supporting the state needs by not only growing our transmission asset base by 2 to 3 times by 2030, but also focusing our portfolio on the right projects that deliver to the wider state objectives, including accelerating the most critical projects to support the decarbonization goals set out in the CLCPA. As we continue to increase our focus on transmission as a core business, we continue to develop leading capabilities in planning and development of transmission, project delivery, and asset management of transmission. With that, I'll end my presentation and open for questions.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, one question that I had, similar to the discussion we had in regard to our hydro facilities, when we look at our positioning around transmission and delivery of power to our customers around the state, how are we approaching technology applications and how customers will want their power delivered to them going forward? You know, sort of the smart transmission approach. How do we look at that in terms of our investment strategy, as opposed to looking at, you know, where the technology is today, but how we think the technology should be delivered, again, to deliver clean energy throughout the state?
Trustee McGibbon, great question. As you know, currently NYPA has a wider program going on with digitization and grid modernization, and that involves not only deployment of different sensing devices across the system, but also a build out of our own internal fiber optic network that supports the integration of the system as a whole to enable us better manage that system. In addition to that, on the development side, we continue to explore and review the new technologies like the fax devices, static VAR compensators, the DC technology that can enable us to utilize and optimize the existing right-of-ways and enable transmission across the state to the load pockets.
We've been leading in that area. If you recall, a few years back, we converted our Marcy South transmission system with the application of what's called series compensation technology, which basically smart grid electronics. And by using and repurposing the existing line and existing rights of way, we were able to transfer 400 megawatts more of clean energy from upstate to downstate without building, rebuilding the entire line. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to take advantage of advances in smart grid technology and other technologies like HVDC to be able to integrate renewables much better, because it's not easy to site transmission. So the first goal is, can we reuse or repurpose existing lines and existing rights of way? That's always and usually the answer there is technology before we build new lines and create new rights of ways.
Kim Garish, first of all, you guys got the matching headsets. Does that like come with this function, or you air traffic controllers on weekends, or what you got going here?
It
Secretly
feels like
DJs. I think we DJ transmission, right?
Okay. Well, just watch what parties you DJ at. Make sure
You're a gamer, Kim.
Help me a little bit. The 2 to 3 times increase in transmission asset base sounds significant. How does that compare to the last 10 years. My sense is our transmission asset base has been relatively stable. So at the risk of showing my ignorance, in the last 10 years, how much has that asset base increased?
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check the numbers.
A lot less than 2 to 3 times. I mean, I'm assuming 2 to 3 times is a significant lift.
Scott
It
Cameron
is.
maybe can answer that, but my guess is that our transmission has been constant until we did Marcy South series compensation.
Okay. So my question is, what other resources, what's our capacity what else needs to be done to increase our organizational capacity and or competencies to enable that kind of growth and development?
I'll say something, but let me ask Joe first. I mean,
Yeah. So right along we've been.
You have an official headset or no, Joe? Because I don't really trust the answer.
Just a minute.
Okay.
So, so that's something we've been actually thinking about for the last year or so, is not only building our capacity inside, but also from an external standpoint, resources, our competencies in whether it's cost of production, technical design, and which is even more complicated is kind of like the systems planning piece, like understanding all the implications of one project versus what's going on in the rest of the system. So we've actually already started recruiting and retaining individuals and consultants in that area. We've also just announced more recently an internal organizational design, which is going to help accelerate our response to this in some ways. So working very closely with business development in Grish's area and Sarah's area, we're going to give Phil Toya a more leadership role in some of the things that we're going to be responding to going forward as well.
We need to increase our capabilities, as Joe said, in transmission planning, that area, production cost modeling and computer simulation in that area, project deal structuring, project financing, legal, but that's both legal and finance. Project management, we need to probably add some resources there because of projects we've never had this kind of build out of transmission at NYPA since probably 1979 when we built Marcy South. So this is really a turning point.
Major move, right?
Yes.
So the 150 to 200 million isn't just in physical infrastructure. That includes the cost of talent and everything else that's needed to expand and increase the organizational capacity.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yes.
So upwards of $2 billion has been earmarked, and this is a key and leading strategy. So with generation, it's to stabilize and ensure that foundational component remains strong. This is one that you're really looking to lean into in a significant way and really establish our leadership role in an even more substantive manner.
That's correct, to help advance the goals of the state under the LCPA.
And there will be a complementary goal, Chairman, with the fact that as we look to invest and grow the capacity of the transmission system, especially out in Western New York, it will have beneficial impact on the dispatchability of Niagara. So, there's certain things that you can do from a system standpoint to improve the flow through, let's say, right, of electricity from Niagara, who's competing, by the way, for those byways and highway access with other renewable generation already in existence and planned, which we'll need for a 70 by 30 goal. So there'll be some synergies, I think, and benefits between the transmission investment as well as valuing our hydro.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Kim and Garish? Other than where you can get matching headsets? Okay. Thank you both. Well done. Obviously, digitization is an area we're incredibly proud of in terms of the continued evolution and growth and positioning of the authority. Daniela and Rob are going to take us through some discussion on next steps and what we foresee in the future.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman, trustees, members of the public, and colleagues. I'm pleased to be talking to you today about our strategy when it comes to digitization. I know I've heard a lot of questions about technology, and you've heard some of what we're doing already. And I think we recognize that technology is key to our success and the success of our customers. So digitization is one of our 4 pillars for Vision 2030. And if you recall, when we refreshed our last strategy, we set forth an ambitious goal of becoming the first end-to-end digital utility. And so what does that mean? It means that we want to leverage technology, advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to optimize our assets. You heard earlier about the work that we're doing on next generation Niagara. That's a significant investment, and we expect to see great returns from that. We also want to help our customers find solutions to the challenges of a decentralized grid, and we are partnering with third parties on developing those solutions, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we want to enable our employees where they work, whether they're in the field, whether they work remotely, as we have seen from the pandemic. We had to move from to a virtual setting in a matter of days, and we were successful in doing that. Or whether they are in the office as we return to the office in a safe and thoughtful manner. We believe that we've laid the foundation for achieving end-to-end digitization and have attained significant business value through the convergence of technology and the business. Over the last 3 years, we focus on improving our technical capabilities or enhancing our technical capabilities and putting in place the organizational structure that was needed to support achieving our goals. As a result, we established the Digital Transformation Office under my leadership to support the organization through the transformation. The DTO team, as we're known, act as a bridge between strategy and business operations and act as a catalyst for the transformation. We have also filled key roles in the area of data governance and quality, enterprise architecture, and doubled down on our focus on cybersecurity. Today, Rob Piasek, our Chief Information Officer, and I will talk about our progress and next steps on this journey. Next slide. So you may recall, Nypus established 3 digital hubs. The Integrated Smart Operating Center, or ISOC, allows staff to monitor our equipment, identify trends and anomalies, and work with plant staff to take action to avoid unnecessary equipment outages or damage. Asset data is currently streamed to the ISOC from over 62,000 data points, and we intend to have another 53,000 data points streaming by the end of 2021. That data comes from approximately 1,000 sensors that we have installed throughout our asset fleet. We estimate that to date, we have achieved approximately $40 million in avoided costs. The next hub is our Agile Lab. Agile stands for Advanced Grid Innovation Lab for Energy. This lab allows us to bring together industry stakeholders to develop solutions to the challenges of a decentralized grid. We have developed a model of New York's transmission system above 230 kV, which will allow us to simulate grid performance as we integrate renewables and distributed energy resources into the grid. We'll continue to partner with transmission owners, the New York Independent System Operator, NYSERDA, and the Electric Power Research Institute, also known as EPRI, who's supporting us with the operation of this lab. The third hub is the New York Energy Manager. It is built to help our customers reach their energy goals. It is an energy information platform and service that organizes and visualizes energy information, manages load, and optimizes energy usage for almost 16,000 of our customers' facilities. To date, we have helped our customers achieve over 2.3 million kBTU in annual energy savings. In addition, we are collaborating with external partners, as I mentioned before, to develop new products that will improve building energy performance, lower energy bills, and facilitate decarbonization, and enable the integration of distributed energy resources into the grid. This is critical to helping our customers achieve the goals laid out in the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. In addition to these 3 hubs, Nypus has made investments in foundational IT infrastructure that has enabled us to achieve much needed business capabilities. I'll turn it over to Rob to describe a few of these.
Great, thank you, Daniela. Good afternoon, trustees and stakeholders. Daniela just mentioned or highlighted strategic digital hubs that are foundational to NYPA as a digital utility and is profound as far as our 2030 strategy. Those hubs are built on digital capabilities like infrastructure, numerous digital technologies, and digital services, which work together, and they're based, or rather based on scalable and what we call vendor agnostic digital architecture. The implementation of the 5 investments, as noted on the slide, there we go, establish a foundation, or what I like to call building blocks. They work together to help us to build new solutions and to enhance our existing solutions. So what I wanted to share versus what's in addition to what's on the screen are some additional highlights. So number 1, virtualizing the infrastructure. You may have heard this and me mention this in previous board meetings. Essentially what we're saying is taking our infrastructure, all components of our IT infrastructure, and virtualizing it, making it shareable, that we can move and shift that infrastructure from a software perspective to meet the ebb and flow of the business demands for new applications, support new business models. And in fact, a good example is COVID response. Nobody could have anticipated that. So having the flexibility of having that dynamic environment, we were able to move 100% of NYPA employees off-site within 72 hours. That's a clear demonstration of the flexibility of that infrastructure. And in addition, we created 13 COVID-specific applications to make sure that our employees were safe and tracking the dynamic changes, as we all know, with COVID, and still are tracking. Number 2, it's strategically using artificial intelligence and machine learning to derive insights on our enterprise data, which is really our next biggest class of asset. And that's across all business units. So I can cite examples like in the commercial operations space for New York Energy Management, or utility ops around asset performance management. And looking into IT is around cyber and how we protect our digital ecosystem. How? By looking at behaviors, how things are being used, looking for internal, external threats, and being able to be proactive and take action. So number 3, it's really around building strong data management and analytics capabilities with new roles and new skill sets, with the goal to improve the quality, the security, our governance, our ability to integrate multiple data sources, and to visualize this enormous amount of data in a way that's digestible to be able to take action. And that's especially important when you have hundreds of thousands of sensors, or we're sharing information from the partners, many of which Daniela mentioned, and of course our customers. So again, some examples that you're probably familiar with is in New York Energy Management, or again in the asset performance management platform. Number 4, it's around the use of cloud services and applications to support NYPA to be in our mobile workforce. Be able to have ready access to applications as they become available in the marketplace, or as we develop them to make them available wherever you are. So that helps to build the resiliency and flexibility within our environment. So again, some examples we used in response to COVID, looking at collaboration tools like WebEx, Zoom, like we're using now, certainly, and Teams, which is very much an integrated tool. So number 5, it's really around arming our digital workforce with easy to use tools and services to increase our mobility, because that is the new norm, allowing our workforce to make decisions in the field, whether it's working from home or folks in our commercial ops working on projects, or our utility operations folks supporting our generation transmission services. Support higher engagement, and of course, safety. So some examples that we've done or have exercised was making sure that every employee has smart devices that can access mobile applications, so we can communicate with them when we have COVID risks that need immediate action. So that helps to support a mobile workforce from working from home or again in the field. So the main takeaway on this slide is very simple. It's really around demonstrating that we made the investment, but we're achieving greater flexibility, improved governance, security, usability, standardization, and agility. from our investments, and we will be leveraging them going forward in our 2030 strategy. Next slide, please. So not only are we implementing the digital technology ecosystem, but we're using it. We're deriving value by transforming and digitizing our business processes, which on the slide is referred to as strategic technology solutions. It's really focused on our customers and the employees. So here's a few examples. In line with our workforce transformation strategy, we've deployed a number of digital HR applications that happen to use cloud services, software as a service, as you may have heard. That's really key because it's allowed and resulted in higher engagement of our employees, empowered employees because they have ready access and can be self-serving to do their jobs, as well as being trained and higher skilled. We're using digital building blocks from our digital infrastructure that I alluded to. We just created a customer account center, also referred to as CDEX, which enables our customers to access their data and any new incremental services that we make available, which we hope to, and they can do that anytime, anywhere, with any device, knowing it's secure. And for them, and the benefit to them is that they get a better customer experience and value-added services as they become available. Some examples are, as you probably remember, online customers can do the online billing whenever they want to verify their bills, energy audits. They can look at their consumption and changes in the consumption. And again, other value-added services as they become available. Modernizing our treasury system to better manage cash management. And another aspect is really around leveraging our physical assets. So what you'll see on the slide is around energy control, the Emergency Energy Control Center. Well, we're using that very strategically as a hot site for availability of our critical applications. Given that we can virtualize our infrastructure, we can simply move it to different locations based on the risks that we're facing. So that's really powerful and actually better protects NYPA in terms of our resiliency. So the main takeaway here that I'd like to leave is again, reinforcing that we are leveraging the incremental, well, first off, the investments in the incremental progress, but we're also transforming ourselves to become more efficient. And with a deliberate shift on our customer, the customer experience, and the employee experience. So that's really pretty much the highlight that I wanted to share. I know there's a lot more behind that in terms of the details. Any questions?
Rob, where are we relative to our customers in that the evolution digitally? Are we keeping pace? We're setting the pace, playing catch up? What do we see? What have we seen so far? And what do we anticipate as we look ahead?
So I'd answer that in a couple of different ways, Chairman. We're leading them, showing the value, but working with them not to override them. It's easy for us to say, hey, here's technology, here's all sorts of enablement, but if they can't digest it or they don't understand how to use it effectively, it's not going to add value. Furthermore, in many of the platforms that I mentioned, the data needs to be cleaned up in a way that can be managed to be able to derive the insights. And that's why we're making and have made investments in around data management and around the analytics and getting tools to improve the quality of the data, to get ownership of the data so we can make sure, especially in our customer space, but I would argue in our core business, that we have confidence in the data, there is quality, it's got proper ownership, and we're using it in effective ways. In terms of the platform adoption, we're making very good progress with the Customer Account Center. I think most of our customers, and I'll defer to Sarah on this, with the actual count, but we've made tremendous progress onboarding them into the Account Center today. So really it's about first off them having the ease of use, and we've made tremendous changes within that platform, and I'm talking about Account Center, where we wanted to make sure the interface, the way that customers choose to access their data is easy and intelligible. So we've worked iteratively, especially over the last year or so, to listen to the customer and to reflect that. And that has helped with the adoption. Chairman, did that help?
Yes. Do you expect, as you look ahead the next 10 years compared to the recent years, that we'll just need to continue to invest at a consistent pace, or will the returns on the investments we've made increase more rapidly?
So I think there are a couple of different aspects of this. I think there's always going to be a required investment that's required. However, as we apply these building blocks, it helps to standardize using standard architecture, a way that we're developing applications that would be more consistent, and we can deal with larger scale more efficiently. As we look at effective use of cloud services, we get away from administering all the servers and all the back end infrastructure. So I think it's going to be a combination of strategic investments that provide the innovation and the ability to leverage third-party intellectual property, but then also look inwardly to say, hey, how do we minimize our portfolio of applications that we've amassed over the years and rationalize those out, so we can use that as an offset for investment going forward.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, this is Sarah. I mean, I would just add to that. I think that we've had to do, for whether for CDEX, for customer digital experience, for the account center, and NIM, had to invest in the infrastructure and the guts of the platforms. That took some upfront capital expenditures. Ongoing, obviously, there's maintenance of those platforms, but really we're looking at continuing to iterate and to add additional functionality on that base. So I think we will be seeing consistent investment. I always say to the team that if you're not digital, you're not relevant. And as the question came earlier today, you know, where we're going with our customers, it's leveraging the brand recognition of NIM and the functionality of that, along with the other systems that we have at our disposal and other softwares that we're looking that are, you know, best in class, that NYPA didn't grow from inside, but really are trying to leverage those that have the core competencies to be providing a broader platform to integrate all of these technologies and provide added value to our customers.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, so you know, when you think about it, NYPA has had two events that have really forced it to adopt disruptive technologies. One, of course, is the end-to-end digitization, and the second, of course, is the remote workforce. And when you integrate disruptive technologies, you have both risks and rewards. And one of the things that I think folks should keep in mind is that NYPA has been a leader in creating, through the Agile Lab, the ability to test new hardware and software technologies in cycle. So, you know, it's a test bed, and throughout state governments in particular, but also the feds, they don't have accessible test beds. And it's given me a lot of confidence that as we integrate these new technologies to be able to handle the different situations, that we at least have a way of monitoring how they're going to impact in our network. Rob, going forward with the increasing cyber threat platforms and strategies that are emerging every day, what do you see as the greatest challenge going forward with a remote workforce?
That's a great question. I think a number of things. To make sure that they're, as digital workers, using the tools effectively that aren't going to introduce risks. We have made tremendous investments to protect all the different endpoints of people connecting and being able to utilize those digital services that I talked to. So we need people to be smart about using the technology responsibly in the way that in which it's being deployed. So there's a lot of focus on cyber hygiene, as an example, and making sure that we understand through our governance processes how people are using information, and make sure that folks are using it responsibly, know if people are, our employees are using the information that should be using it. We're protecting our PII, and PHI information, personal information and health information. So I think it's understanding what's available, how are people accessing it, and make sure that there's the right access for people to access it. Now, in terms of the cyber, we have a deliberate strategy which we've reviewed with the board numerous times and will continue to evolve, that will take actions to protect the different perimeters. I mentioned one of the last board meetings around segmentation. That's a critical part of this digital implementation that I refer to, not only in what we've achieved to date, but going forward. And we are deploying that technology as we speak. So inherently that will isolate and minimize any, call it east to west migration of cyber risks, because we're isolating it in smaller pockets. So it can't be all this all-encompassing, threat that just annihilates the organization. So it's deliberate decisions and deliberate technologies that we're employing that will help to minimize impacts. As Gil says often, and let's face it, threats are going to occur. We may be compromised someday. It's how we best protect and not be adversely affected. So knock on wood, we've done pretty well, but we will continue to look forward and deploy the technologies that will be used responsibly, and we'll be able to track that. I'm not suggesting Big Brother's watching, but we want to make sure that people are educated on how to use the technology and are using it effectively, because we want people to be able to use the technology, call it self-service, but in a responsible manner.
Thank you.
Michael, did that help?
Yes.
Great.
Any other questions for Rob or Daniela? All right, very, very well done, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our last topic for the day is the world of ESG. It's obviously a priority focus for all of the corporate and business world, and a key pillar for us as well. And Carrie Jane King is going to talk to us a bit about our longer term view of how we maintain and develop a leadership position there. Carrie Jane.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members of the Board of Trustees, the Executive Management Committee, the public, and NYPA colleagues. I'm glad to have this opportunity to discuss our new sustainability strategy, which will encompass environmental, social, and governance performance, and will guide the implementation of Vision 2030. There's an increasing interest from the public and the financial sector in companies' sustainability performance. And this trend is clearly accelerating with the health, racial justice, and climate crises we're facing. The new sustainability strategy is an opportunity for NYPA to reassess where we are so we can best meet the needs of our stakeholders and take advantage of opportunities to create value for the long term. Our strategy will include the preparation of a 5-year sustainability plan and annual sustainability reports, and will be built around the environmental, social, and governance issues that have been identified in our recent materiality assessment as having the greatest impact to NYPA's business and being of greatest importance to our stakeholders. Next slide, please. It might be helpful to clarify what we mean by sustainability and environmental, social, governance, or ESG. Sustainability is a business approach that applies a triple bottom line, environmental, social, and economic framework to manage a company's performance. The idea behind this approach is that companies can do well by doing good, or to be more accurate, can do better by doing good, because they will be more resilient over the long term. Environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, generally refers to the standards that have been created to measure and report on triple bottom line sustainability. Investors and credit rating agencies use ESG standards to assess a company's capacity to respond to risks and take advantage of opportunities, and how these will impact its financial performance. Next slide, please. Recent events are presenting a real-time test of whether companies are set up to manage complex and evolving ESG issues. And we're seeing in reports from BlackRock, McKinsey, JP Morgan, and others that companies with strong sustainability performance and high ESG scores are demonstrating greater financial resilience. Next slide, please. So where are we and where are we going? What we've done so far provides a strong foundation for our new strategy. NYPA has been meeting and exceeding state targets, for environmental sustainability. And we are leading among state agencies and utilities in sustainability management, especially with the creation of our Sustainability Advisory Council. That's I think we're the only agency and authority that has a structure like this, which has been very effective in moving our performance forward. In 2018, we issued our 5-year sustainability plan, which sets enterprise-wide climate and environmental goals. And we're making good progress in these areas. And our new sustainability plan will build on this work and will address 15 material ESG issues. These include climate change and diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as renewable energy, energy resilience, and of course, health and safety. These priorities have clearly been shaped by our current social and political climate, including our national reckoning with systemic racism and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And we think this new sustainability strategy will help NYPA adapt and respond to these new risks. Next slide, please. This maturity model shows a fairly typical corporate sustainability journey. NYPA's performed well at the compliant and functional stages, and our broader strategic focus on ESG will get us to the integrated stage. To achieve our goal of becoming a best-in-class ESG leader, we'll embed ESG in our strategy, governance, and programs, and we're setting ourselves up to get there. Next slide, please. What are the steps we're going to take? Well, for sustainability to be fully integrated as a strategic priority, sustainability management and oversight need to be elevated. ESG KPIs will be incorporated into the corporate scorecard with frequent reporting to the EMC and board, and ESG risks will be integrated into NYPA's risk registry. The Sustainability Department function will transition to a more strategic role as advisor on ESG strategy, performance management, and reporting, and will move forward with the implementation of the strategies, programs, and initiatives identified in our new sustainability plan. Lastly, to be more responsive to our stakeholders' expectations for transparency and to demonstrate our commitment to ESG, we plan to publish annual sustainability reports that align with the standards established by the Global Reporting Initiative, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and the Task Force on Carbon-Related Financial Disclosures. I just wanted to add that I'm very excited about this new course NYPA is taking in sustainability, and I think this is a very timely opportunity for NYPA, really a great time to establish itself as an industry leader. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Gary. Lots of questions.
Chairman,
Yes, Judge.
are we going to get a diversity report by the end of the year as part of this ESG performance?
So diversity, the diversity report is something I believe is being prepared by Nancy Harvey, our Chief Diversity Officer, and it will be the way that diversity, equity, and inclusion will be included. It's been identified as a material topic, so there will be a section on the efforts to address diversity, equity, and inclusion at NYPA, with goals and commitments clearly laid out in the plan. I think the plan will be in addition to this report that Nancy is currently preparing.
Yes, Judge, if you recall in our last board meeting, the board had asked us to, re-review our D&I plan and to kind of think bigger, and we're working on that and scheduled to bring that back to the Board of Trustees in December.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, so if I could just tie on to that, because it's a very good question. Because obviously, all of the things that we've talked about today, whether it's about, our approach to work around our hydro facilities and continuing to be leaders in reducing carbon emissions as part of our strategy. The ESG covers that, and the DEI work that we talked about at our last board meeting. And I guess I want to make sure that the understanding is this ESG generally, will be lying on top of everything, all that we do, because it doesn't work if you're not tying it into your strategy and using it as an opportunity to create operational efficiencies, make your business more resilient and competitive. And again, sustainability is I've always looked at it as the, you know, the sort of the key theme or the headline here, and making sure that, you know, as you come back with a plan, it will then incorporate all the things that we've talked about today, as well as what we talked about at the last board meeting, in identifiable targets that we're setting for ourselves, so that we can, as a board, measure what we're doing. Because, you know, there is no set standard on what ESG means. It means different things to different companies. There are groups that, you know, provide guidance, whether it's the SASB or GRI or TCFD, and then there are groups that do assessments like MSCI and Sustainalytics. But so we, you know, this is an attempt, I hope, for us to decide what our narrative is and how we're going to present that to our stakeholders, to include our customers and our employees and the communities that we operate in. But, you know, the expectation is you're going to come back with some concrete things in these broad categories that include the things we've talked about today in our last board meeting, but additional areas as well.
So this is exactly right, and exactly right. And so our plan will identify the targets and metrics across all these areas. As you said, these overlay all these up. This plan encompasses all these initiatives that we've been talking about. And our report is a really fantastic opportunity for NIPA to tell its story, to address these issues, report on our progress, but communicate to stakeholders that we are listening, that we understand their concerns, and that we are managing. And this is an opportunity for us to explain the challenges, but also the opportunities and our progress. So I see this as a huge opportunity for NIPA to engage with our stakeholders and also get recognition for our accomplishments.
And we're doing something about it.
Yes, exactly. We're doing something about it. We have, and what's really wonderful also is that the sustainability plan will align with Vision 2030. So we're supporting the higher level strategic vision, but we're providing all the KPIs to assess how we're doing. So we're setting the targets, identifying the KPIs, and the 15 issues that we've mapped out are very robust. They align with the EPRI priority issues. I've been working with EPRI for a long time. I'm very familiar with what the electric utility sector is doing around in sustainability, and our material issues are spot on. They came out just in line with everybody else, but I think we're more ambitious. So I think we have a great story to tell, and this is a great opportunity to tell it.
Carrie, what do you see getting in our way as we continue to navigate through the 4 stages that you had captured a couple slides back and evolve to the point where it's embedded in our DNA? I mean, what concerns do you have, or what are our key challenges as we continue to, you know, make our way to be that best in class, you know, transformative position?
I think that's a great question. And I think there are two key pieces. One is governance. I think EMC and board oversight is absolutely critical. Having KPIs embedded in the corporate scorecard is key. Having ESG risk integrated into NIPA's risk register is a key. That this needs to be, I think management and oversight is absolutely critical. And to the point of management, I think that the sustainability department needs to be playing a more strategic role. We have been, our focus has been on environmental sustainability, and we have been managing a lot of projects across a lot of areas to embed sustainability practices in the business. I think it's time for us to transition to a more strategic role, to transfer those projects to the relevant departments, and to really focus on strategy, performance management, and reporting. And I think with this governance structure, we can do that. I think that the Sustainability Advisory Council has helped a lot. We have all business units represented in 28 departments, but having that high level oversight, I think, is key. For this to be front and center and on the EMC's agenda and the board's agenda is what's going to really make it happen and make us able to move fast.
Gil, anything you want to add to that in terms of just the cultural evolution and transformation for the organization?
Yeah, I think as Trustee McKibben described it, this is, this is an umbrella that sits on top of the things that we're doing. What's interesting to me is that the rating agencies, because they know that we've been working on this, there's some, it's not completely a secret that we've been a leader and focus on sustainability. Now we're talking more and more about this broad term that there are no specific standards yet, as Trustee McKibben said, ESG, but it's such a hot topic, especially in the capital markets. The rating agencies have approached us and really want to work with us as we develop this plan. I anticipate at some point this is something that they're going to be looking at when they do their assessments of companies.
That's interesting. Okay, any other questions? Carrie Jane, thanks very much. Well done. We look forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
I think with that, I'll flip it back to Gil, and that covers the intended agenda relative to strategic initiatives, at least for today, before I wrap it up with the one consent agenda item we have. Gil, additional thoughts or comments from your perspective in terms of the strategic effort?
I just want to thank the Board of Trustees for going through a couple, 2-3 hours of this with us today. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your thoughts and input as we sharpen and finalize this. We have another one coming on November 12th. We will focus on the customer. We will focus on transitioning our fossil fleet, our fossil business, to a carbon-free business, which is consistent with our state's goals, and the other foundational pillars that the other 3, or at least the other 2 of the 5, will save up the diversity, equity, and inclusion to December. But the other 2 foundational pillars we will discuss in addition to our focus on the customer business and the transition of our natural gas assets.
And we'll also bring canals into this as well. Obviously, a key component of our focus as well.
Yes, so we will add integrate canal to the overall Vision 2030, which basically is an integration of Reimagine the Canal that we announced earlier this year, and additional improvements and tweaks, especially post-COVID.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Unless anyone has any other questions on the topic, I'd like to move forward. We have one consent agenda item that hopefully everyone's had a chance to review. And unless anyone has any questions, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
All right, Tony, thank you for the motion and the second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, well, I'll echo what you just heard from Gil. I thank everyone for the additional time and effort and attention today. As Ian has been mentioned before, we have a second meeting in 2 or 3 weeks. November 12th to be exact, all of which leads up in combination with the operation and business planning to our regularly scheduled meeting in the first couple weeks of December. So unless there's anything else to come before us today, I'm pleased and happy to take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Heard a second in there as well. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thanks so much, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and make sure you vote.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Thank you. Be safe.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.